All right, I gotta fucking cure this hangover, brother. How was it? So this is Tim Hale. He is. Let's go ahead and introduce you real quick. You are. Let's see. The meme king of DC Gulag, soldier, union rep, actor, comedian, journalist, and political prisoner for 1,064 days. That's an impressive fucking resume, guy.
Well, thank you. I don't like to brag, but I will. Yeah.
I don't like to
Yeah.
gloat, but let me just tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah.
So, would you
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
introduce yourself in your own words?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. My name is Tim Hale. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank
Um,
you for coming on.
Power to the people. So I was caught up in January 6th. I was one of the first people arrested. I did about 3 years on a 4-year bid, and a lot of shit went down that day. I don't know how is that a bad word? I'm
Oh, I
sorry.
don't give a fuck, bro. We cuss on here all the time.
Groovy. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of shit happened. Nothing that you heard about J6 was true at all.
Oh,
I was in a shithole they called the DC Gulag. It's basically the county jail inside of Washington, D.C. I was there for about 2 years. I did a year in federal prison. Um, J6 was a setup. Donald Trump did not tell us to break any laws that day. And there's a lot more that is involved with J6 than meets the eye. And
mm.
there's so much we could go into, but thank you for having me on. I'm down to answer any questions you got or flesh out any ideas you might have.
Yeah, man. I mean, I mean, anybody that doesn't at this point think that J6 was not a setup, bro, is a fucking. I mean, you got to be just with your eyes closed. It's like fucking Bird Box, you know. They're over there fucking blind. Um, it was definitely, especially. Did you see that report that they had? What was it? 26 federal agents now that they've admitted
Yeah,
to.
that they'll admit to. Yeah,
Yeah, that they
but
admitted to.
yeah, but only like 3 of them were actually working. The rest just happened to show up by accident.
It just,
It's
hey, take a fed
fucking
to work
bullshit.
day.
It's bullshit. You
Oh,
know how
dude.
many you know how many rats I met after J6 that were like, yeah, we're fucking anarchists, we're Antifa, we're not real fucking. It's like people don't realize like it's okay. So this is complicated, but there's three. Okay, there were feds there, like actual agents, undercover assets, undercover police, Metro PD, Capitol PD, plain clothes, and all that. There were Antifa, and there were basically just what would you call a snitch or a CHS, a confidential human source. So there were different elements there. It wasn't just one thing. So if you like ever like look at J6 documentaries or someone's talking about J6 because they were involved in it, they're not going to tell you that. They're probably not going to tell you like the whole thing, which is that there were a lot of different moving pieces. So like what I found is like they control the narrative. So, like after J6, like immediately was like insurrection just came out of nowhere, that term.
The first
Um,
one that was an armed insurrection somehow. I mean, fucking just ridiculous. Where only
right.
one person died, and it was somebody that was in the
Protester.
in the protest. Yeah.
Right. But you saw how like phony that narrative was. But so like there's been, because the feds try to control the flow of information from all sides. And so and I watched this in real time when I was locked up. I'm like, they're going to eventually let some of the truth out, but they're going to control how people perceive it. So there's this controlled counter narrative that it was just Antifa that set everything off, or it was just the police using excessive force that incited a riot. And those things are true, but there were also other elements there. Like I said, there were FBI agents that were there. There were DIA or Defense Intelligence Agency assets there. And so like you have you have on the internet like a bunch of like social media influencers or like these
Mm.
glow in the dark entities that kind of just promote one aspect to control the narrative because they don't want you to think about why there were so many feds there that day. They won't even acknowledge there were feds. They'll just say,
No.
yeah, there were some informants there, or yeah, there were Antifa there, but they don't get into how convoluted it was because it would there are a lot of people on the internet who are famous that were involved in J6.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people with massive followings on the internet who were involved. And if like you knew the true extent, you'd realize like half of the popular accounts on the internet are fake, astroturfed, and promoted by the feds. So there's a lot there, but
Yeah, bro. I mean, it's insane to I mean, they were locking people up for way more time than they would in any other case. I do want to ask you, do you think with Trump coming in January 20th, do you think it's gonna fucking like they're gonna release more and more, or you think it's they're just gonna sweep it under the rug? And also, is there gonna be a pardon for all y'all?
well, Trump has first. I'll address the pardon thing. Trump has said that he's going to be looking at cases for pardons. Now, a lot of people want like a blanket pardon. I don't really agree with that. He said that they're going to look at things on a case by case basis. I think that's appropriate because, like I said, there were a lot of people there who aren't what they appear.
Mm.
And I know firsthand, having been locked up with informants, snitches, and I'll just say fucking feds, Antifa. There were a lot of people there who weren't Trump supporters who were there to fuck shit up, and to fuck us over, and to set Trump up, and to set the country
Sure.
up. So, but I do think that one of the first things they'll do, at the very least, they will let people out of prison. And so, like, because like you just said, they've been targeting people for shit that, like, if it was any other organization, leftists or whatever, who burned the country to the ground, they'd get a ticket or a slap on the dick, and that would be the end of the day.
Not even
You know,
that. They would get a fucking they would get a reward. I mean, look at the people that fucking sued. They sued the city. What was it, New York, where the rioters actually sued. It was DC, I believe. Actually, it was the rioters actually sued for like millions of dollars in one money. Like, not
yeah,
only do they not get prison, they get a here you go. Here's some fucking taxpayer funds while you're at.
They did that right before J6. Actually, there were BLM riots in DC, and it was the same Metro PD officers who attacked us at the Capitol who were attacking BLM, and I believe they got a payout for it.
Yeah,
But
they got a big payout, and then they were calling Trump Bunker Boy. You remember that shit? Like,
yeah,
and it's like, what is he supposed to do? Just go out there all fucking Spartan style and shit? Like, come on, motherfuckers! Like, what?
right. Well,
What was his action that he was supposed to take that they were calling like they were making fun of him? Can you
I guess
imagine that shit was on the other foot, man?
I guess he was supposed to be like fucking Washington, and he was just supposed to mount a horse and just lead a fucking battalion of troops. Like, what does he? Get out of here, retard! You
Throwing a
know?
fucking ship down the river.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the dumbest shit in the world. But uh,
Meanwhile, on fucking J6, the cocksuckers in Congress were hiding under their chairs with gas masks, crying for pictures and photo ops. Like, get the fuck out of
I
here.
know the AOC shit was what drove me fucking nuts, bro. I couldn't believe like she was acting like her life was in danger. It turned out she wasn't even in the right fucking
She
building.
she she thought we were gonna like smash her. Like, yeah, it's just like, you're out of your mind. I could
Yeah, she's
find
one of
way.
those, what the fuck you talking about?
Like, I mean, she's a phony. Remember at the border, she went down to the border wall and she started
Ah,
crying for those photo ops. It's
yeah,
just
that
like,
was here in Texas, bro. Yeah, we got to see. Well, I didn't see it personally, but yeah, we got to see that. And all of a sudden, like now that we're still in. I mean, we have a whole fucking facility like maybe 5 minutes away from where I live, and it sucks. And it looks like a third world country in that bitch, bro. Like
mhm.
it's fucking shitty. And I'm hoping by when Trump comes in and fucking Hammond comes in and kind of just takes them all out. I mean, I don't know what's going on because there's been a lot of like there's crimes been spiking. There's been harassments. I've had at least two neighbors have to pull out a gun on these motherfuckers because they were asking for money, but more aggressive and asking to like take something. So it's shitty, man. I'm hoping this shit turns around.
That's fucked. Yeah, I was in prison actually, and I was like watching the news, and it was just like, because there's nothing else to really do, and it's just like I'm watching it's not even caravans anymore. It was like motherfuckers were just hanging on to trains and shit, and it's just like, I guess we'll just let a train full of invaders into the
And
country, and I'm just like,
bro,
what are you
crazy.
doing?
They're
I
just fucking
actually,
yeah.
I
They're just
thought
bringing them in.
yeah, man, I'm like, the country's about to collapse. This is the end of Rome. I'm actually watching it with my own eyes. I'm like, holy fuck, this is
Yeah,
exactly what I was worried about.
yeah, it's gotten. I mean, that's the one thing I'm hoping with Cash Patel, man. They need to do investigations and also that new I forgot her name, the one that's gonna be the one that
Pam
took over.
Bondi.
Yes. Yes, I want her to like just investigate the fuck like who was in part with these invasions, who was in part in just letting them just I mean, the stay in Mexico shit should have never been taken away. That was also helping out, we know, with the border. And yeah, the NGOs, man. There's so many NGOs just facilitating this shit, and these motherfuckers need to fucking pay for what they did, bro. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the NGOs, it's like it's basically a shortcut, so they can never say that the feds are actually the ones who are involved. But
Yeah.
you know how money changes hands, and the amount of emails that are probably between different assets. I would love a full-fledged investigation of all these different things. They've destroyed the country, or at least they tried to.
No, they did. They did, but hopefully we could get it back. I mean, they're talking about mass deportations, which I'm all for. Like, get that shit. Let's get them all up. And I think Haman was on there saying we'll deport them as a family. Like, yes. Like, why is that? Why is this controversial? Like, what the fuck are we talking about? You enter
Yeah,
the
well,
country illegally, you fucking go home. Like, that's just the bottom line.
I mean, it's like funny. Like the past 20 years is really, I think, where immigration became an extremely partisan thing. Like if you go back and look at what all the Democrats were saying about immigration and the border and all that, it's like, oh, like they would be calling that racist or xenophobic today. But I mean, historically, you look at President Eisenhower; it wasn't controversial. Like he had one of the highest deportation programs ever, and I mean, it's just it's really about whether we want to be a country or not. If you're a country and you want to stay a country, I mean, Trump always says if you don't have a border, you don't have a country. But even more than
True.
that, like historically, like this is just a matter of will. You either have the will to survive and the will to sustain yourself, or you don't. And these people in charge, it's a mixture of imbeciles and bleeding hearts who just don't understand statecraft, and they have this egalitarian, idiotic worldview, or they're people who genuinely do want this globalist vision to the point where they're willing to let their country be sacrificed, and they're intentionally doing it. So it's either way, it's either evil or stupidity, but neither should be acceptable. So get them
Yeah,
out, out, out.
I totally agree. Now what you were talking about with the blanket pardon, I agree with that as well. I think there were some people that were doing some stupid shit and they need to be charged, not to the way they charged, like they were. I read so many articles where they were like giving people more time than they would give in a normal basis, right? And that shouldn't be allowed. But I also
Yeah,
feel like, yeah, you had grandmothers fucking just walking in. You had people that did nothing but just get let in. And luckily, like when Tucker Carlson, I don't know if you saw that while you were in prison, where they
yeah,
showed the shaman and they were like literally fucking, come on, hey, look at this. Here's a tour. And he's like saying, be peaceful, everybody, all that. And it took that for them to let him fucking out. And they were like, they were talking about, I remember online, bro, and they tried to memory hole all this shit. But they were
yeah.
talking about like he needs a death penalty, he needs this, and oh my god, he's evil. Firing squad needs to be put on him, and it was like, dude, are you fucking serious? Like, let the facts come out. And it's like, if you have so much proof that these people were that evil, release the tapes. No, I mean, is that so fucking hard?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean that's totally right. I mean, I went there, and I went there in a suit. I would have never thought to dress like a buffalo, but that's not exactly a crime.
You got to
No, it's
give it
not.
some. Though. That was fucking cool though. Fucking shaman.
Maybe next time dress like an elephant or a rhinoceros. I don't know, but yeah. I mean, they're withholding all this fucking like, oh, it was the worst attack on our country in history. It's just like, okay, well, that's obviously not true. But if it was, why wouldn't you release all the video for the sake of posterity, history, and all that? That's because they're hiding feds. They're hiding feds, and they're hiding. They're just hiding that the majority. Here's an interesting thing. If January 6th was an insurrection, don't you think the violence would get worse when people went in the building than on the outside? Don't you think it would have escalated instead of, like you said, grannies walking through velvet ropes and
Yeah,
to look at statues like a fucking museum? You know,
yeah.
there
It was for for the
yeah, I
most
mean,
part.
here's some insight about the outside too. There were provocateurs and agitators planted in the crowd to escalate tensions between protesters and the police.
Mm.
But there were also people who genuinely just reacted to shit they were seeing. Because I mean, keep in mind, these are red-blooded Americans. A lot of these guys are veterans, former law enforcement themselves, firefighter, whatever. These are
Yeah,
good
good people,
Samaritans.
man. Good people. A lot of
So
them.
if you watched a cop body slam an old woman, how the fuck would you react to that? Would you be like, back the blue? Or would you be like, what the fuck's wrong with you? You
Yeah,
know?
I'm with you, and I'm one of those like Republican kind of guys. I don't back the blue for fucking everything. Like I hate when they're back the blue no matter what. No, fuck no. They're authoritarian. They could get authoritarian, and we saw that during COVID. And it's like,
Right.
no, you don't just back the blue blindly. That's fucking stupid. But
And
yeah,
that's the
go ahead.
yeah. Well, I mean that's like there's this weird dichotomy when you watch the video, and they'll play like the same 30-second clip of someone breaking a window for 3 years, but when you look at actually like the totality of video, you see a lot of motherfuckers there who have back the blue flags or thin blue line flags and shit like that. And it's just like, how did they get to the point where they were fighting cops? Logically, that doesn't really make sense. And so you have to wonder what happened between the beginning and the end point. And you had the police. I do think there were malicious elements within the Capitol and Metro PD. I think more so the Metro PD came in as backup and they just started attacking people and made things worse. But you had these cops who didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Let me rewind a second. So initially, there were barriers around the perimeter of the Capitol building, around the Capitol grounds. Just there were like bike racks, and there was like some chicken wire fencing or whatever with these little signs that said restricted area. Well, what happened was before Trump's speech was over, before he was even done talking, a half hour before people like me showed up, you had a group of people who tore these barriers down, tore down the fencing, and rolled up the signs, whatever, and threw them to the side. So thousands of people like me walked into an area that was restricted, and there was no warning that it was restricted. We had no fucking idea we weren't allowed to be there. So we're just there thinking we're there for a speech. And the cops just start shooting at us with pepper balls and rubber bullets and flashbangs and ceramic rounds and all kinds of shit, tear gas. And we're like, what the fuck? We didn't do anything. What the fuck? And so we think that like we're under attack for protected First Amendment activity. And so like that's really where the question is, like, how did this really start? Who is really behind it? They've just been blaming Trump, or then you have one side who's just blaming the police or blaming Antifa or whatever. But it's just like there were elements who coordinated this. This is where you probably heard the name Ray Epps. I don't know if you've heard that name.
I mean, how the fuck? He's in like every hot point in the videos, and somehow they're like, well, he's not really worth, looking into. Like, are we? Like it's almost like you live in the Twilight Zone, bro. It's like this can't be real, and the people just accept it. And it's like, why are we accepting this nonsense? You know what I'm saying?
I think people focus only on Ray Epps because really there was like an army of people working with him if you watch the video. But I've never seen the fucking government apologize to a J6 defendant until they were forced to finally charge Ray Epps with a misdemeanor and give him probation. They were like, oh, this man, he's just had it so hard these past few years. He's been the victim of these conspiracy theories, which are totally baseless.
Yeah,
and just like,
he's a Marine. He's a good guy. They threw all that shit in there.
Yeah, it's just like, he didn't even, from what I hear, he didn't even have to show up. It was like a Zoom call. And this was after COVID. So it's just like, it's just weird. The way they handled him, even after they finally prosecuted him, is way too fucking weird to ignore. There's something going on with him. And I'm not saying he's the only one, but there's clearly more to investigate. And this is, again, like you think of like the blanket pardon thing. It's just like, I want to know every Ray Epps that was there. This is me personally. I don't speak for anyone else, but I want to know how many people set us up. And I want to know what assets they had that they burned, because feds burn assets. They do fake perp walks. They do so I think that there are defendants who are not real defendants. Some of them admitted it to me. There was a guy I was locked up with. He was caught in a drug conspiracy in 2020. And that's why he was helping the feds on J6. So you have these elements.
That's everywhere. But no, definitely there's I mean, you don't just speak for yourself. I think you speak for the country when we need to know who the fuck was involved, how was it, and it's true. Like, what did they use it for? They used it to just have more government control. Look at what they did after J6. I mean, they went all in. They're like, we're gonna silence speech. We're gonna fucking investigate anybody that says anything against us. I mean, they just became a authoritative state after that and said, like, we're just taking it all out. People were pissed off, and understandably so. 2020 was a shit election. I mean, you look at it, did you ever see that chart with the votes and it just goes up 2020 and it goes right back down, and they're like, oh, well, that's
the hockey stick.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about that. That's nothing.
Hello, Benford's Law. Yeah, it was statistically bullshit. But it's like, not for nothing, like, there's just been this gradual escalation in entrapment schemes by the government. Do you remember the Whitmer case out of Michigan?
Yes, with FBI agents. It was what, like 5 FBI agents and one regular
It
loser
was,
guy that they manipulated and drugged up.
it was more than that. There was like it was over 15 people. It turned like half of them turned out to be federal informants, and it was the guys who they actually set up never conceived of kidnapping the governor. And yeah, it was a total Fed op. And
Yeah, I thought I had read it's only like it was only I think like all of it was feds except for like two people. And what they did was like he was kind of like a loner on the internet and stuff. And he, they gave him drugs. They would take him camping and give him drugs and all kinds of shit. But basically what fucking Charles Manson used to do to his people. I mean, the same shit. And then they kind of, kind of gave him the idea to go kidnap her. And then, when you're drinking, it's like you got these people influencing you to come on, man, go kidnap her. And that's what it was. And then they made a big thing, and Whitmer was like all over. Oh my God, these right extremists, and dude, they tried to make it a big thing, and it just turned out to be a bunch of fucking feds. And
she
like,
was a part of it. She
yeah,
was actually in contact with the FBI the whole time. It was total bullshit. But they used that to fuck with the last election.
of
And then
course.
J6 was a way. I mean, I think J6 was twofold. I think one, it was a way to shut people up for questioning the 2020 election. But then you saw they prosecuted Trump afterwards so they could sabotage the 2024 election. Didn't
Oh yeah,
work, but
no,
they keep doing this shit. I mean, I'm in prison. Like I'm watching. You ever heard of Patriot Front? These dudes
yeah,
who look like they're dressed like FBI agents. They
dude.
just
I
take
mean,
FBI off the shirt. Like this,
dude,
you
it's
know.
so fucking ridiculous. They have those little cargo pants and the fucking shirt. It just looks like a
It's
bunch of fucking FBI.
like
Yeah,
it's like,
basically like they just took.
gee, I wonder if it is what it is.
I
Like,
wonder if this is undercover guy. Yeah, I bet you anything they take off their little collar shirts is they have an FBI shirt under it and shit. It's so
right.
stupid.
But I
So,
mean, you keep seeing shit like that. It's like it's so clear, obvious. They're trying to set people up all the time. It's just going to get worse unless like we get people in there and they just clear house. They got to end these stupid infiltration programs because it's not going to stop.
oh nah. And then they've been doing this shit. I mean, they did it a lot during the after 9/11, with a bunch of Muslims. They were entrapping the fuck out of a bunch of Muslims and saying, look at they're plotting to do this. No, you plotted and you convinced this guy and radicalized him, and then you said, oh, look at what we're doing. We stopped it. Now I'm for dismantling the fucking FBI completely, bro, like cleaning house. What is your take on that? And I don't mean like not put something in its place, but we need to fucking the way it's going right now. It's so like politicized, and it's just a radical arm of the left wing at this point, and I
Yeah.
don't I don't see it recovering. How about yourself?
When the entire like the FBI was born into corruption. When
Oh
you
yeah.
look at Hoover and you just look at the whole history of it, COINTELPRO, the various. I mean, they've been entrapping people and setting people up since the civil rights era, the
It's
Nam era.
good, man.
Yeah, since the very beginning. Yeah, I think it's a corrupt organization. Personally, I wouldn't lose. I don't know if it ought to entirely be dismantled or like maybe 90%. I don't know. I just know that if it was abolished, I would lose no sleep over it. I
Yeah,
think that the federal government, look, the country is a lot bigger than it was when it was founded. But I was a history major, and it's like I always look back to the country's founding. When the Constitution was ratified and you had your first administration, the executive government, the executive branch of the government consisted of George Washington and John Adams. That was it. Eventually, you had Jefferson as Secretary of State. You had Hamilton as Secretary of Treasury. You had Knox as Secretary of War, and then you had an Attorney General's office. You didn't even have a Department of Justice. You just had the Attorney General's office. And I think maybe we ought to go back to that because the DOJ is so big, it has the FBI inside it, the BOP inside it. And I just feel like maybe the fact that it's so massive gives the upper brass a lot of cover. So if it was just the Attorney General's office, I think that would really put the spotlight on who's really calling the shots and who's behind the bullshit. That's kind of how I look at it.
for sure. I mean, the bureaucracy is just insane. They're unelected officials that just fucking run the country, and they just go unopposed because nobody knows what they're doing, and then they just say, "Well, it's classified," and they classify the fuck out of everything, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, you need to tell us what the fuck's going on. And that's cool that you're a history major. I used to teach history, so I love it as well. And as in the founding, people were not meant to become like career politicians, right? They were meant to like they had a business or a job somewhere and they
Yeah.
lived in the community that they served, right? And then they go into government, serve, and then they go right back to their
Get the
personal
fuck out
life.
of it.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it was like you go and it was like really like, hey, I'm serving the people. Nowadays, they're just serving themselves, and there's nothing going like there's absolutely nothing like being. There's no service. You're like you're always saying we need a thank you. Fuck you. What do you do? All you did was enrich yourself. I mean,
Right.
look at everybody from Clinton to Biden. They all go into office fucking way more poor than when they come out. And Trump's the only one that lost money as president, and he's the only
Right.
one that's ever donated his whole check. And they still shit on this man. It's insane, like the way they look at him. The way I always seen Trump, right? He sees people as competent or incompetent. If you're competent, he's with you, no matter what fucking color you are. If you're incompetent, he could give two shits. He just looks at you like you're incompetent. There's no point in having you
You
anywhere near.
either you do a good job or you're fired. That's
Yes, that's exactly the way I see the way he runs everything that he does. And they just want to make it about race. And it's like, no, it's just about competence and incompetence. That's a businessman mindset, you know, that's the way it goes. If you have a business, you're not gonna fucking want to keep incompetent people on your staff. Like, who wants to do that shit?
yeah. Well, I mean, it speaks to the nature of like how worthless the government has gotten. Because I mean, you made a great point about public service and the original intent. I mean, you did have like people like Henry Clay, who were very instrumental like throughout American history, but in general, that it was not the norm that people stayed on. Like if you look at like the amount of
Yeah.
years people served in Congress in like the 1800s versus today, it's fucking insane. Like yeah, people like Washington didn't want to serve. Like you know what I'm saying? Like Washington
Yeah.
thought it was like his duty, but like after 2 terms, he was like, "All right, I'm done. I'm out of here."
Yeah.
That's where the standard came from. It was quite a while until someone tried to challenge that precedent, and that's why I think like personally, I think we need term limits for Congress because I mean, we have an amendment to limit the terms of the presidency. Why don't we have that for Congress, for the House and Senate? I think
That
that's
is
a big
exactly the
deal.
point. That's exactly the point. How the fuck do we have it for the executive but not for the legislative? I mean,
Right.
it's so ridiculous. And they've been saying they're gonna push that. I know Ted Cruz has been pushing that for a while, and hopefully they do. I mean, Ted Cruz is also a career politician, but he's been pushing for it. So I'm hoping he's like about it. You know, it's like you said earlier. Like if you when you go back, like yeah, they're selling the country out, and I think it's more just like intentional, man, what they're doing. I mean, 90% of the drones are made in China. You have all kinds of our medicines are over there. You mean you just like they're selling out our own people. Well, even the military equipment, a lot of it's made in China. Nobody's curious about that. Nobody's curious about China buying farmland near the bases. Like, or are we just fucking that? I feel at some points I'm like, are we just that stupid? What's
I
going on?
mean, as somebody like I served 12 years. I've worked for the Army and the Navy, and like the two biggest installations here in New Jersey. If I'm being straightforward, like I think anybody could break into them and sneak onto them.
Yeah,
And we're not even talking about drones. In fact, I know they have drones that go. So when I went to prison for J6, I was on Fort Dix prison. So
oh shit,
I went to prison where I worked in the Army. It was kind of funny enough, and the
all
way they
full
get
circle, huh? It goes
yeah, I made it.
full-
But in the prison, they have people drop off like cell phones and shit using drones. And like there's news articles about this. This isn't even like new. It was going on for a while. It's just like, all right, if a bunch of fucking prison inmates can get shit with drones on Fort Dix, you think the Chinese can't fly drones over? It's just like it's bullshit. Like
yeah,
our mindset is totally fucking ass backwards. We're asking to be attacked, or just to be like infiltrated from the inside.
oh
Um,
for sure.
yeah, but back to the Congress thing, like like I wouldn't have a problem with people. I wouldn't have like okay, it's like it's got to be one or the other. Like you have term limits or have an age limit because you got people who are like they're basically corpses that they're wheeling in to sit in Congress. Like they don't show up. There was that one. Remember, there was there was just a story about there was this one chick in Congress. She just disappeared because she had memory issues, and they found her in like a nursing home or something like that. It's like, whoa, that's where you've
Yeah,
been.
yeah, that should be on the front page. You know,
That's
like
that's crazy. I didn't look too into it, but if even half of that's true, that's insane. Our government is so compromised just from the lack of standards. So it's just like, yeah, I think it should be like a 12-year limit. Mark Levin, um, You know,
Yeah.
like I'm not the biggest fan nowadays, but I've read he wrote a book called I think it was the Liberty Amendments, and he had one in there for like term limits. It was like I think it was like 12 years. And it's just like you can do a certain amount in the House, a certain amount in the Senate, or one or both, but it's going to be a max of 12 altogether.
Mm.
And I think that's fair because again, you got just god damn like it's funny like in prison I was just watching like you just had these people croaking left and right. It's like these, and then you have Mitch McConnell freezing
Oh my God, dude! The Mitch McConnell did a
multiple
video on that.
times.
Yes, and they're like, Sir, Senator," and he's just like fucking like you need to fucking take it out the case and blow on it and put it back in. You know, like
Right.
Nintendo.
Is the
Like
fucking
what the fuck?
Nintendo.
Yeah, it's like what the fuck happened to him? Dude, it's like we're in a simulation. You know, like they just paused him for a second.
It's like a shitty washing machine. You got to bang it on the side.
You know,
Fucking
hey,
it's
come on, old man.
holy
Like,
fuck.
dude, that dude is such
Fucking
a fucking cunt too, man. Mitch McConnell. Like, I don't know why
yeah.
that Kentucky keeps voting for that dipshit, but they do.
I mean, he's
And
crooked. I think he's been in there so long. He has so many favors, and he's just got a network of support. I don't think he's popular in Kentucky, to be honest.
he keeps
I think
winning.
yeah, he does, but I don't know, man. I don't understand how he gets in there, and I think that there's maybe other I don't know, man. But yeah, he's got
Yeah.
it. Thank God he stepped down, but he resigned as the Senate leader for the Republicans, but he's still there. He didn't
Yeah.
resign from the Senate. He's still in the Senate. So I mean, they got to kick that motherfucker out.
And he has
No,
pull too, man. He has power in that bitch still,
yeah,
even though
well,
he fucking
he's a
reset.
Trump hater. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's never Trump.
So
So
I would love to ask you though. Speaking of the J6, like, what were you charged for? What did you like? What did you do in that time during that whole protest riot that ended up happening? I do remember, and we just to go back on it. Yes, they were doing those sealed canisters, throwing them, those like those flash bombs, the gas and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And they do have video now of them reprimanding the officers, like, don't do that. Why'd you do that? And it was like it's a lot more video has come out, and it's insane, and a lot of people don't know that like there were agitators in there for sure, but the cops actually fucking got it to where it was kind of civil, like people were just waving their flags to like a hostile environment from what I've seen. I wasn't there, so I would love your take on that. Was it kind of when it first started before the everybody ran into to the Congress, was it kind of like a chill environment, or was already getting hostile before the flashbangs and all that other stuff?
so first, I just want to say this so I don't forget it. You'd mentioned the canisters. A lot of the injuries from the police were self inflicted because they didn't know what the fuck they didn't know how to use their own fucking equipment. They were actually spraying themselves because they weren't listening to their superiors because the wind was in their direction, so they got a lot of blowback from their own sprays. They were
Mm,
incompetent. But so, like I said, there was the initial breach around the perimeter, and then thousands of people poured in. The cops set up this piecemeal perimeter, I guess. This makeshift line on what they call the West Terrace on the west side of the building.
mm.
Um, and there were a lot of provocateurs and agitators who were just trying to grab bike racks and shit. But for the most part, people there were civil. Like from that side, and let me give some more. I can give you a map in the future, but like the entire you have the west side of the
I
Capitol,
actually
and there's
I could I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah, yeah.
I could pull up this right here.
Okay, so yeah. So you have on the left there, that's the west side. On the right, that's the east side.
Hmm.
So on the left there, you have scaffolding on the top, which would be I guess that would be the northwest scaffolding, and then on the bottom you have another scaffold, and that would be the northeast, I guess. So you have two scaffolds on both sides of the west side, and these lead you to the Capitol building itself. Now, what you have is people are scattered, thousands of people all across that west side. But eventually, the cops escalate the situation. Instead of dealing with all the specific agitators individually, they just start randomly attacking the crowd. And the crowd doesn't know there's anything wrong happening, and they don't know that they're not allowed to be there. And so, from their perspective, they don't know anything. Like they don't know they're in the wrong, and they don't. So they think that they're just there for a protest, and so the cops are attacking them, and that snowballs. Like the situation snowballs, it escalates, and so the people start getting rowdy because they're like, "Why the fuck are you spraying me? I didn't do shit."
Yeah.
And they see, like I said, they see old ladies get body slammed, women and kids are getting hit, and so the crowd starts fighting the cops. But even then, most of us still don't even see this shit. We just see occasionally the cops spray people or whatever. We don't see violence. We just, we're just like, why the fuck are you spraying me? But anyway, eventually, people start breaching these scaffolds, which are covered in tarps. I guess these scaffolds were under construction in preparation for the inauguration or whatever.
Mm.
Um, and then you have a media tower. If you look at number 1 on there,
Mm-hmm.
in that area, when you look at 3 and down, that's the West Terrace.
Mm.
There's a tower there. They call it the media tower, and the idea is that the media, when Trump or when Biden was being inaugurated, whatever, that's they'd have cameras there and shit like that. But so people are on top of the media tower on bullhorns telling people to do shit. And some of
Mm.
them have never been identified, and a lot of them are suspected to have been some kind of Fed or informant or something. But when you look at areas like 4 and 5, people go up scaffolds and they get through that area. Now, actually, I guess it would be number 3. I guess 3 would be where the northwest scaffolding is. So people go through those scaffolds to get away from the cops because they're getting shot at and getting sprayed.
Mm.
Now, you had, again, because of the way like crowds work and crowd mentality works, a lot of people were just following others. So you have this breach up the scaffolding, and that leads people to where the Capitol building is. That's where I ended up walking through. I go up this scaffold and I end up towards where you would call it the Senate wing door area. This is where the first physical breach of the Capitol building happens. Someone breaks a window in, and people crawl through this window and they end up kicking open the doors in that hallway. This allows people like me a couple minutes later to pour through. So hundreds, if not thousands, of people enter the Capitol through doors that were open before they arrived. And then, honestly, like for in there, it was pretty much entirely peaceful inside the Capitol building, which, like I
Mm.
said, would go against your expectation of an insurrection. If the purpose was to overthrow the government, you'd think people would be less civil once taking over the Capitol, not more civil.
Oh, for
Most of the
sure.
violence, most of the violence was on the outside of the Capitol building because people were responding to excessive force from the police or because they were being riled up by agitators in the crowd. And or because they were those agitators themselves. It was
Mm.
very isolated. The violence was specific from specific individuals for a variety of reasons. One, they were defending themselves. 2, they were defending a third party, a loved one or a stranger. 3, they were just being an asshole.
Yep.
Or 4, they got caught up in the moment. You know, but I got charged with. They call this the misdemeanor cocktail. So it's like 4 misdemeanors: picketing, trespassing. There's like 2 others. They're just stupid misdemeanors. They're not real charges. They're just like, okay, you can't be here. But they ended up giving me a felony charge called obstruction of an official proceeding. This
Mm.
is this is some bullshit that was passed because of the Enron scandal. It had to do with destroying documents, but because in the statute it says whosoever interrupts a joint proceeding of the House and Senate, they were applying that to us. Well, the Supreme Court overturned that last year. I believe it was June of 2024. The Supreme Court finally overturned this bullshit felony that they'd given to hundreds of people in order to justify giving them years-long prison sentences. So that was me. I walked through the Capitol building. I danced in the Capitol Visitor Center. I took selfies with. I took.
That's that's awesome, bro.
I know.
You-
I took selfies with statues in the crypt. The crypt is this circular room with a bunch of statues and busts and stuff. Someone had put a Trump flag in the statue's hand. I'm like, oh, I got to take a picture of that. So I posed in a picture with that. People were putting like Trump hats on the statues' heads.
was just like, yeah. I mean, I saw when they're breaking the windows. I get that, and that shit that's fucked up. And like hurting, like if they were hurting any officers and all that. I know no officers died, what they try to say they did. But that I'm not for. But I mean, y'all walking in there, taking pictures, putting hats. Did they confiscate your phone for that shit, or do you still have those pictures?
So they took my phone when they arrested me, but I was able to get some of the stuff in my discovery, my evidence or whatever, like a year later.
Mm,
So yeah, I released well, so like I took video that proves we were entirely peaceful where I was, and we were just there chanting like USA, we were chanting Christ is King, we were singing God Bless America.
mm.
And it's like I'm on the Capitol grounds just chilling, you know. Um, but there's I don't have a lot of photos from inside the Capitol, but I do have the CCTV, and I dug the CCTV up. I released it when I got out of prison, and I didn't do anything. I fucking I tried to help a guy that the cops injured. I tried to pick him up off the ground. They tried to say, "Oh, I was interfering with a police officer." I'm like, as soon as a cop got near me, I fucking backed up and walked away. I didn't. I'm literally wandering through the Capitol building. You can see me. I go through a hallway and then I turn back around because I don't know where I'm going, and then I turn back around the other way. I went to the bathroom. I had to take a leak. I spent like 5 minutes in the. I did that. I washed my hands. I was respecting the Capitol, washing my hands. People were. But people were. I have video. People were picking up trash inside the Capitol because the cops left a bunch of trash, water bottles and garbage and stuff inside the crypt, and protesters were picking it up and putting it in garbage bags. I know one of the guys, Christopher Cuny. He's a Marine. He actually was responsible for issuing the 21 gun salute for Ronald Reagan's funeral.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
awesome. That's
yeah.
incredible.
I just interviewed a guy, one of the first people I met after J6 on Con Air when the marshals were moving us. One of the first J6 defendants I was locked up with, Mike Curzio. I just interviewed him, and he's like, I have his video. He was fist bumping cops inside the building, talking to them, shaking hands with them and stuff like that. It's like, it's just not what they said. And so, like, yeah, they hyper focus on a couple officers getting injured. They don't tell you the full story, and then they ignore all the other stuff that shows, like, yeah, people were just kind of wandering around for the most part.
Yeah, and I do want to ask, did you got arrested there, or did you find out later?
No,
Like,
I got
did they?
arrested. I got arrested about a week after. I got arrested
Oh, okay.
January 15th. Um, so
I would love to know what went on. Like in my mind, right? I've always wanted to ask the J6er this. Like, what fucking went on in your mind, right, when you heard, hey, or what did you get? You got a subpoena, or what happened? Did you get? Did you just?
no, I got raided.
Oh, you got
Um,
raided. Damn, you got
so
the real criminal treatment, huh?
yeah, so this sucks. So I was a Navy contractor at the time, and I worked overnights, and had a very poor relationship with management because I was also the union rep. So I was actually working on an investigation of the employer that I was working with my congressman on, Chris Smith, who's a scumbag, Chris Smith from New Jersey. Um, because they were violating the rights of veterans and shit, and
Mhm.
so because a lot of we primarily hired from National Guard and military reservists and shit like that, and they're not supposed to fuck with people for going on military duty, but they were. So, long story short, I had a piss poor relationship with management. They knew I was at the Capitol. They didn't know what I did, but they tipped off NCIS,
Oh,
and so
good. What a
NCIS, the
scumbag, bro.
FBI, yeah, they came to my house looking for me. I wasn't there. They found my roommate and they made him wear a wire. And so
What
they, yep,
I'm
they had
sorry, I
my.
don't mean to laugh at your pain, but that's just overkill, bro. Like, god
I
damn.
didn't. I didn't even know they still did that. They still wore wire. Like I thought that no, it was like a little wire. They strapped him up.
They gave you that Donnie Brasco fucking treatment, bro.
Right? They fucking. So my roommate comes up to me, tries to get me to say incriminating shit. I've been drinking. I'm like, fuck that, yeah, whatever. And so like they record me, and then the next day, I'm on the way to the pet store. I'm leaving that night. I'm going on the off ramp because I lived on the base I worked at, the Navy base. I had an apartment there with my roommate. He was a Navy seaman, and so like I'm driving. I'm about to leave the base to go to the pet store to get pet food for my fish, which were all dead, by the way. And I get pulled over, bunch of vehicles, unmarked cars, black vehicles, all blacked out, and yeah, FBI, NCIS, they pick me up. I'm like, fuck. I stopped the truck, I turn it off, put the keys up, and like, boom, guns in my face. I'm like, fuck, I'm not resisting. And they drag me to the ground. I'm like, I'm not resisting. They tore the flesh off my shins because they dragged me to the floor so hard. I didn't even know it at the time because like there was so much adrenaline. But I looked at my jeans later; they're just covered in blood, and it was just like so surreal because like that adrenaline, like where everything just slows down. You're like, oh no, it's like it was kind of like that. And
I
then
get in that situation many times. When I was younger, I got locked up a couple of times and did a high speed chase. So I know that adrenaline, like everything's just yeah. I was a dumb shit when I was younger, but I know what you're talking about exactly. So in your mind, did you know why I'm getting arrested, or were you like, what the fuck's going on? Like,
yeah, I knew. Well, so like initially, like there was 1 second where I'm like, I'm not sure because there's a fire station on the base, and they leave every now and then to help the local fire department. And I'm like, it could just be the fire, but then I'm like, no, that's way too many lights. That's way too many. Like, here we go. It's happening now.
holy
Yeah,
shit, man! I could
and then
imagine that your head at that moment, like, what the fuck?
yeah,
That,
yep. And then they took me to the county jail in Jersey, Monmouth County. Then like a week later, they took me up to Newark because they got another county jail there. So I was in 2 county jails in Jersey. The marshals eventually picked me up in New York. They put me on like literally Con Air. It's a real thing. They load me up on this plane, and they flew me to Oklahoma. They kept me there for a night. They flew me to West Virginia. Then they drove me to Virginia, where I stayed for like another week. And
and
then
I
they
do want
finally took me to DC.
and I do want to add for people that don't know the law well, you do not do that with 4 misdemeanors, bro. Just to show like what they were doing and how they were treating how they were treating you all. And it was definitely it was to show like you don't fuck with us. It was a public display. You fuck with us, and this is what happens. Did you get a bail or no? Were you denied bail?
I was just going to say that. Yeah, I got approved for bail. They gave me bonds when I went in front of the magistrate judge in New Jersey when I went to that first jail.
Hmm.
And then the government appealed the decision. And then it's like, well, guess you don't get bail because the government complained about it. So they overrode my right to bail. And I had to wait until I got all the way to DC so I could go in front of the district judge who overruled the magistrate judge. And then yeah, I had 2 bond hearings in front of that guy, denied me twice, and then I had a bond appeal motion, and that got denied by the appellate court as well. So they fucked me 4 different times on bail.
And that is the true term of political prisoner right there, bro. Denied bail for a fucking walking through the house. Like that
Yeah,
is insane, bro. When I was teaching, right? I remember there was a guy there and he was a sped teacher and he was talking to one of and all the English teachers are fucking liberal as fuck. Like extreme like wokeism. Like, this guy, he was just talking and he goes, "Well, yeah, that's what these motherfuckers get for joining a cult." And then I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Those J6ers. So you're okay with jailing people for doing nothing other than walking into a building, getting escorted?" And he goes, "Nah, that's not what they did." I said, "Yes, like 90 something percent of them just got escorted in there." And the videos had already came out. I was telling him, like, you'd be okay with that. You'd be okay if the shoe was on the other foot, right? You would be fine. And he goes, and he's like, you could say like the wheels are turning in his head. And I was like, dude, you're okay with imprisoning people with no bail for fucking 20 years. Some of these people were getting, and luckily you only got the 4, which not luckily, but I was reading people that were getting 20 and all that. And I was like, you're okay with that? You just want this authoritarian fascist kind of government? And you could tell he was well, I just need to do more research on it. I said, yeah, you probably should, bro. Like you probably should before you condemn a group of people you don't know nothing about. Not all of them were bad people. And
yeah.
they drug you out, put you on airplanes, and I mean treated you. They gave you the Royal Paris treatment, I would say.
Because like the average person who had like that mindset about us would also totally agree that the justice system
It's flawed.
disproportionately affects minorities, disproportionately affects poor people, is corrupt, is evil. They need criminal justice reform, it's weaponized government, blah blah blah. But as soon as it's Trump supporters, it's just like, oh yeah, fuck them.
Oh, but
You
when
know,
you're conservative, bro, like me, I'm not Mexican. Like according to people, like I'm a fake beaner.
uh,
They're like, oh, you're one of those fake beaners. You're not a real
you
one. 'Cause you're
you're an internalized white supremacist.
and it's true.
Coconut, brown on the outside, white.
I was telling one of my friends the other day. I was like, even if we had a first woman president and she was conservative, they
Right.
wouldn't give her that title. They would just be like,
No.
"Oh no, it's not going to be the first woman president, so it's a fucking Democrat." Like that's
Right.
the way it goes.
Well,
And
yeah. I
like,
mean, that's always the same. Remember how they treated uh, what was the governor from Alaska? They did that to her when she. I mean, granted, I wasn't a fan of McCain, but she was. She was going to
oh,
be the
you're
vice
talking
president.
about during the McCain days. Yeah, I know the Buckaroo. Oh no, what was her name? The Maverick. Oh my God, what was her fucking name? I'm going blank too, but I know.
Caribou Barbie. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I know you're
but yeah.
talking
I
about.
mean, yeah. Conservative women are always fair
Not
game.
women. I would love to hear what's a crazy like prison story that you have that just an informant. Were you locked up with a lot of MAGA people like that were in there for the same thing? And did you form friendships that way? And
So okay, there's two sides to that. Hold on. So the jail again. I was in the jail in DC, and there um, they segregated us from Gen Pop. A lot of us wanted to
Mhm.
be in general population because we would have had more freedom. What they did was they segregated us in a special wing of the jail. So the main jail is called CDF, Central Detention Facility. They kept us in CTF, Central Treatment Facility. It was just basically they kept us in an insane asylum. So all the J6ers were segregated away. Yeah, and so I think on average, like there might have been like 30 people roughly. The number varied as more people got finally sentenced and sent away. But yeah, I made some good friends in the gulag. There were informants at the worst point. At the worst point in DC, I'd say like a third of the guys ended up becoming rats, Antifa, like
Mhm.
just scumbags. That was at the worst point. Um, I ended up meeting Zach Alam. He's the Antifa guy who broke the window where that woman Ashley Babbitt got shot through the neck.
Mhm.
Um, there were a couple rats in there. Yeah.
That's
Now
crazy.
in prison, see here's the thing. Everybody thinks snitches get stitches. Not all the time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think they should, but in prison, there are different security levels. I went to a low security prison because I had no real bad background. But in like the higher securities, usually like if you told you like you get taken care of. What happens is like what you're supposed to do, you got to have your paperwork, right? That'll show if you told, if you were a rat. Usually, not all the time, but it's usually usually you can tell. Um, where I was at though, unfortunately, on Fort Dix, it's disgusting. Like a third of the guys there are chomos, like kitty diddlers and sex offenders and
Ooh.
shit. They keep there are a lot of rats there who tell, and so like they don't face repercussions. And then funny enough, it's almost kind of an ICE facility. So like a lot of the illegal aliens that are caught like trafficking or being used as mules, they kind of hide them there. Even though
Mhm.
it's not officially an ICE facility, they kind of that you have people who are doing time there for immigration or drug trafficking related shit.
Mhm.
But here's a story, and I want people to understand just how fucked up the justice system is when it comes to like the snitching. Like they really incentivize setting people up. The first, and I knew this. I'm like, watch the first guy that comes up to me, he's going to be a rat. Sure enough, I get to Fort Dix, I get to my unit. First guy that fucking comes up to me, this 4 foot tall dude, he's like, hey, yeah, you want to join our racist, white supremacist gang? Da-da-da-da. I'm just like, now I don't look like it, but I'm Puerto Rican actually, so I'm not like they tried to say I was a neo-Nazi. I'm not. A fucking comedian. They took a picture of me with a mustache like that from a year before J6 to try to say that I was a Nazi. I'm like, dude, that's fucking old. It's a joke. But they tried to set me up as like the next Timothy McVeigh. So like the fucking first dude who comes up to me tries to get me to join like this white gang. They don't have gangs, actually. I should say they don't have gangs in low security. They have what's called a car. So a car is who you roll with. I
Mhm.
actually rolled with the Puerto Rican guys, but I didn't really roll with anybody because I was there for a short time and I just stayed to myself. But I got this dude's paperwork. He fucked over 7 dudes for a lighter sentence for drug trafficking. I'm like, I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it. And so I went to the library. I made copies of his paperwork showing he was a rat, and I fucking spread it throughout the entire jail.
Nice.
And don't like that shit. And I fucking knew it. Yeah, he was a scumbag. But I mean, that's just one story. It's a microcosm of what it's like. Because I mean, I
And
told you they tried to set me up. They did this. It was the same thing in the jail though, because you got people who've never been in trouble, and like I get it, but people just break easy, and so they were trying to
yeah,
set me up. You have people who were just so desperate to get out of trouble, they'll fucking throw someone under the bus to get out of trouble. It's just how it is.
yeah, I mean it's fight or flight, man. I mean it's
Yeah.
definitely that's the way it is. That's why when people always say I never snitch, like yeah, because you've never been in an interrogation room looking at 20 to life. That's why. But once
Yep.
you are, you're gonna sing like a fucking bird, bro. Like, and that's the way it goes. But I do want to say, I had read that they were making people sign, and especially in the DC jails and prisons, like saying like they were wrong and Trump lost and all that. Is that true in any way? Because I know it's the internet and I don't believe everything on there, but was there kind of some sort of re-education camp that y'all had to go through in a way? Yeah, but in
Well,
that,
actually, yeah, that actually did happen. So I'll get to the signature or statements or whatever. But actually, because we were in solitary and we couldn't leave, they had these education tablets. So they gave us these tablets,
terrible.
and it was Trump Trump hating propaganda, and it was just like I'll send you afterwards. I'll send you some posts I made on X with pictures. I was able to save some of the shit, and it's just like Trump's crimes A to Z. I'm like, straight up, I shit you not. I swear on a stack of Bibles this fucking high, there was just anti-Trump propaganda, CNN articles. That was our education, you know.
So that is
So
true.
that's a
That's
real that's a
crazy, bro.
it's a real thing. It wasn't like it was optional, you know. It's just like it was either that or nothing. But like you could just stare at the wall if you want. That's fine. You don't have to get educated. But um,
But
yeah.
just
So
being
when
able to
people,
have that there is insane to me, bro. Did a
well,
lot of
this
people
is
turn on Trump because of that?
some people, yeah. And like what's fucked up is like people don't realize this is like they have like a 99% conviction rate in general in DC, but they have a 100%
Wow.
conviction rate for J6ers because it's in DC. We can't get changes of venue
Mm-mm.
because of the controversy. They set us up to get fucked anytime we go to trial. So, but that's how fucked up the facility in DC was, but it really is a reflection of what people think in DC. I had like when I went to trial, because I didn't take a plea deal, I went to trial and I got convicted. But it's just like my jury, when you look at the voir dire hearings that we have the transcripts, they were trying to put people from Chuck Schumer's office on my jury. They were trying to
Wow.
put the amount of like half the people on the jury were lawyers for the DOJ or other, other government departments and offices.
That should
Um,
constitute a mistrial automatically.
I would think
Like,
so.
yeah,
You would think that's by like not for nothing. Yeah, I get
extreme
like
bias.
it yeah, like I get that the crime happened in DC, therefore the jury of my peers is DC, but the amount of bias can't be overcome. There was a complete due process violation. But in terms of like people who take plea deals, when you take a plea deal, what they do is they also make you sign a statement of facts. Whether you agree with it or not, whether it's true or not, irrelevant. If you want that plea deal and the lighter and the light PP slap, then you're going to sign the statement of facts. And the statement of facts is usually bullshit. It's their framing of what happened, and you're agreeing to it. And you also waive your right to appeal later on. So yeah, then but even beyond that, there were people who were lying or blaming Trump so that they could get bail,
Mm.
or because they got because they wanted a lighter sentence. So you had people who'd throw Trump under the bus and be like, "I'm sorry, I'm not radicalized anymore. Trump is responsible for J6. I was just doing what he told me to. Please forgive me for being brainwashed by this cult." There was one guy in the jail with us. His name was Tom Civic. He was a snitch, and he threw us under the bus because what we would do every night, we would sing the national anthem in the jail at 9 o'clock every night. He used this to get bail by saying that we were a cult and he was being radicalized and he wanted to be, he wanted to be reformed. And so he writes a letter to his judge blaming President Trump, calling us a cult, and he ends up getting bail. So yeah, and keep in mind this is after he went to the hole for sexually assaulting other dudes in the pod.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah,
Oh,
the dude's in the hole, and what he tells him, he's like, "Oh yeah, I asked to go to the hole so I could get away from this cult." He got thrown in the hole because he got written up for PREA violations, prison rate,
he was in
for
the hole for getting in the hole.
yeah, for trying. When he wasn't
Uh,
showing people his cornhole, he was trying to see theirs. Yeah.
That is
So
that is wild, bro. That just blows me away that they would do that. And what how much time would you be looking at if you did sign the plea deal? Like, were you looking at probation, or were you
um,
looking at still some jail time just reduced?
they had offered me several plea deals and I turned them all down. There was one I think where they offered me 15 months, so that would have been about a year and a half.
Oh, still jail time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
They had, like I said, they tried to frame me as a neo-Nazi, domestic terrorist, insurrect. Like they had a hard on for me, especially because I had a security clearance and I worked for the government, and I didn't like I they had the ammunition they needed to try to portray me as a
Oh,
fucking extremist.
thank you for your
So
service, sir. Now we're gonna lock you up in a gulag.
yeah,
Fucking
yeah,
terrible, bro.
fuck yeah. I
You,
was
what you should have done is
I
got the lantern, man. You would be rich right now. You know, the lantern guy's tearing it up all over.
yeah the you know what's funny, like the well, I'm sorry, yeah. So they I don't, I can't even be sure. Like, here's the thing: I went to trial on principle,
Yeah,
but you know, there's no way of knowing. Like, if they had just given me a simple, like, I don't know how it is in Texas, but like in New Jersey, they're greedy and they're corrupt, and they give people tickets for shit all the time. The cops, you know, they give people citations all the time, and it's just because they want money. So
yeah.
they'll give you some bullshit violation. Go to the court, talk to the DA or the prosecutor, whatever the fuck, and like, okay, I'll just downgrade this to this, and just here's a ticket, go pay it the fine, $300 court cost, $500 save the whale fund, whatever the fuck. And it's just like, all right, we got your money, fuck off, you're good. I was surprised by how serious the federal system was in terms of how hard they will fucking destroy you. Like, I
Yeah.
think the majority of people probably would have pled guilty who did go to trial if they were just offered something reasonable. But it was extremely excessive and ridiculous. They wanted they I mean they tried to get blood from a rock. And so honestly, because of my judge, he sent so even though I was convicted at trial, I still, even with that, they get, like, I got, so okay, yeah, tangent real quick. If you take a plea deal, you get what's called a 3 point. Well, you get a 3 point reduction in your sentencing guidelines for acceptance of responsibility, right? So it's like a number based system. It's kind of arbitrary, but you don't like it, people don't need to see like the whole thing. Just understand, like, you get a reduction in sentencing time if you take a plea deal, theoretically. You get a 3 point reduction. But if you go to trial and you lose, you get a
Yeah.
3 point enhancement. You get a 3 point enhancement for providing materially false testimony. In other words,
Wow.
you're considered a liar if you lose at court. So that's a 6 point difference between taking a plea and going to trial. That's a big difference in how they sentence you. But even with that, I still was calculated at 20 months at my first sentencing. But my judge didn't like me, and he gave me what's called an upward variance.
See,
So
that's what I was
base,
talking about, where they're giving they're extending, they're giving more time for they would usually do, which is insane, and stuff that they did that.
yeah. Well, they wanted to make examples out of us. So yeah, 20 months versus 48, 4 years. I got over twice my guidelines just to fucking make an example out of me. Um, and so I mean that, yeah, that's what it is. So honestly, because of the narratives, you can't even be sure that you're going to get what the prosecution says they're offering you, because they lie about everything. 9 times out of 10 too, um, the government will actually ask for an extremely exorbitant sentence, and then you, as the defense, you'll ask for a reasonable one, and the judge will split the difference. So let's say, oh, you're like, well, I should only get 30 months. The government wants 120. It's like, okay, well, I'll give you 70. That way I look reasonable. You know, it's just like that. That's really what it is half the time. People's sentences are just ridiculous, and it's all for show. And you had said earlier with the way they, you know, hunted us down or whatever, how it was you know, you're correct. Like, they called it the shock and awe campaign. They
Yeah.
were trying to make an example out of us and scare the public.
Don't fuck
This is
with
not a
us.
theory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they wanted to send a message of don't fuck with us because this can be you, and that's what it was. I mean, we all saw. I mean, you were living it. We saw it, and we saw it in real time. And that's the thing. Like they, and the weird thing about today's world, right? Everything gets memory hold within like a fucking week because so much news comes out. Just, I mean, it's just like a bombardment, pa 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 pa, And by the time we know it, we're like, we forgot about what happened a week ago. It's like that's not even a fucking news anymore. So
Yeah.
even like doing a pod, right? You got to do it like right then and there, or it's already old news in like 2 3 days. And that's how people's memories work now because they all have the TikTok brain, and they can't even remember what the fuck happened last week, better yet last month, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what's fucked up is like a lot of people are kind of, oh, whatever about J6. No, we need to know what happened, who was involved, why were people getting extended times in prison. And of course, those people, like you said, that will roll over on Trump, man. Those are the people that are gonna blast on the news, like, look at this guy, he's saying it's a cult, and it's true. Like I was talking to my friend the other day, I was like, they say we're in a cult, but they march in lockstep with whatever their party says. They just all fucking fall in line, and they want to tell us. And in the MAGA movement, I'm sure me and you would like disagree on some stuff, and I'm sure like there's we disagree with a lot of other people on other stuff because we actually believe what we believe, and we argue our points, and then we try to get to the best solution, right? They don't do that. They just fucking whatever they agree with. Okay, that's the new talking point. We're gonna go with it. And I do want to say, on your part, man, that you're willing to fucking say fuck it. I'm gonna just roll the dice and try to, I'm gonna stick to my guns and not give away my dignity for these people, and I'm gonna fucking fight it. And I do want to say that's fucking ballsy, bro. You must have fucking balls of steel. Those Puerto Rican nutsack there, show them for the people. I would say 90 fucking 9% of the people would not do what you did because most people, like you said, when they see a plea deal or they see any way out, they're gonna take that way out. And to be honest, I'm even talking for myself. That would be a hard one to fucking. That'd be a hard pill to swallow. Like,
You
am I
know,
gonna stick to my guns or what? So
it
I do
was
want to.
easy. I'm not going to say it was easy. Like it was easier for me because, like I always say, I was a bum. Like I didn't have a wife or kids. The things I lost were material. Like I lost my apartment, I lost my career, but like it's not it's hard for me to judge the guys who did take the plea deals because like a lot of them were like husbands and
Yeah,
fathers, and it's just like for their perspective, it's just like fuck, they want to go to trial, but at the same time, they need to support their family because a lot of these guys were like the breadwinners, you
yeah.
know, and it's like their wives are working 2 or 3 jobs to support their kids. Some of them were selling their blood. It's like it's
There
fucked up. It's
so many sad stories that come out of that. I mean, one
yeah,
person killed himself. Like thinking about having to go to trial, and it's terrible, man. Like so many lives have been ruined. Like the way they talk about like the '90s bill with the drug, the three strikes bill. We're gonna
yeah.
we're gonna be talking about this in history. How this affected so many lives, so many families, and have just completely destroyed people. And that's what's pretty fucked up. That you fucking stuck to your word and said, I'm not gonna give in. And no matter what, that's still a big thing.
Well, I appreciate it, and so do my giant nuts. The thing that like I always say, like my takeaway is that it's like you said with the crime bill and stuff. Like this was a horrible precedent, and I always warn people. Like, and here's like this is a twofold warning, I guess. One, we have a common law system, and so like any precedent you make, good or bad, will last for generations. Unfortunately, that's true for the bad ones too. So like you look at Brown versus the Board of Education. Think about how long it took to desegregate since Plessy v.
Yeah,
Ferguson, or
it
you
was
look at
about what 50, 70 years.
yeah, like you look at Roe v. Wade, and then you look at how long it took for like the Dobbs decision. It was like 70 years. So like this kind of shit, if it's not nipped in the butt immediately, it's good. It sets unfortunately a precedent for the future where we do the same thing to the other side, and that's my second thing, which is that I don't want that.
Yeah,
I think it's a huge danger to our republic if we normalize the weaponization of law. And so I don't want I don't want like manhunts and house raids for Democrats and shit like that, even if they're cocksuckers. I don't want that
yeah.
because it's just going to create a never-ending cycle that leads to the destruction of the country. This is what Rome went through. Instead of the Senate, you had one emperor, one Caesar assassinating the last one. And I don't want legitimacy of power in this country determined by who you're able to knock off or who you're able to arrest. And
Oh, for
I think
sure.
that's the direction we've been headed towards. And we're not going to have a free country in the future if we don't put a stop to it now. So that's
I
my
def-
warning.
I definitely agree with that. And I say that to liberals all the time. How would you feel if they were just targeting one of your candidates with phony bullshit like the way they've been doing with Trump?
Yeah.
And I am for knocking down Democratic houses if they broke the law. Now, if they didn't
Yeah.
break the law, if they're just cocksuckers like you said, nah, man, you could be a cocksucker, go suck cock, do whatever you're doing. But yeah, if you broke the law, then yeah, I'm for like we need to start prosecuting motherfuckers breaking the law. Yeah, we need to start prosecuting people that need to be prosecuted. But I agree with you 100%. You can't just start weaponizing the DOJ. You can't weaponize the FBI, which it is. I mean, that's what it is right now.
Yeah.
And we need to actually prosecute people that are criminals instead of just people that don't agree with us politically. And
Yeah.
that's 100%. Totally agree with. This hour and a half went by so fast. I really want to talk again if you're available. I want to thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure there's a lot more. And next time, maybe I'll buy a 12 pack and you can fucking drink some beer. Do you drink?
I'm actually not a drinker.
Oh,
I'm
you're
kind
not a
of
drinker.
I'm a nerd, straight
Oh, what
edge.
kind of beaner are you,
I
man? What's going on?
I did drink some hooch behind the slammer, but
Oh, did you? That
it
toilet
was
hooch?
no, they don't do that anymore. They put it in
I
garbage
know.
bags, they hide it in a closet. But yeah, it's pretty much.
Yeah, I actually seen the way they do that shit. But no, man, definitely I'm gonna have to if you're able to reconnect again. And do you have anything you want to plug, like a YouTube or something people watch it? Do you have a podcast? Or I see you just have your X account. Is that what that is?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. Just search Tim Hale or Tim Hale Criminally Funny J6er. I'm on there. It's not hard to find me. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you, man.
Yeah, I do want to just show that this is Tim Hale, criminally funny J6er. I will put it in the link as well. Damn, doing the dad, bringing it back, huh? I do want to thank you. You need to write a book or start a podcast or something, man. Start talking about it. Turn this negative thing in your life and turn it into a positive. And are you doing anything in today's world other than are you doing comedy or something like that?
I'm kind of holding off on that for a bit. I used to live stream and stuff like that. I'm going to get back into that. It's just I'm waiting for the God Emperor to get back into office. I am going to work on a book actually with a lot of the guys I
I
was
was gonna
locked up with.
say that would
Yeah.
be awesome. Hopefully, we can reconnect and do some more and talk about some more bullshit. I'll have a drink for the both of us, and we'll just have a good time, man. But this is Tim. Go follow him, Tim Hale.
Louis of Monmouth.
Louis
Yes.
the Mumment. There you go. Fuck it. You got to say it with that kind of tone, huh?
Maximum snob.
Yeah, I'll keep in touch. You have a good one.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thank you, bro.
Godspeed.